Investing in this city because we believe in this city. It is the second largest city by a long way in this state after Brisbane, and it's getting the infrastructure it needs. This light rail project is fantastic, $1.2 billion worth of investment across all three levels of government. I want to acknowledge the commitment from the Commonwealth and also from Mayor Tom Tate and the Council, who have been big supporters of light rail. And we're seeing heavy construction work well and truly underway, and to build 8 new stations from Broadbeach here to Burleigh. We know light rail has been incredibly popular on the Gold Coast since the first 2 stages were built. Second stage by the Palaszczuk government just before the Commonwealth Games, and it works so well moving people around, not just for the Games but since then. What we've seen is patronage return to light rail beyond the level before the pandemic. People love their light rail, and the numbers are coming up and up. So great news there. One of the contracts under light rail from Broadbeach to Burleigh, which I'm here to talk about today and I'll pass over, is a fantastic story with Munya Workforce getting the contract, being run by Sai and Anthony Fayenga, who are standing next to me, Wallaby legends, and they're contributing strongly to this project, getting the contract. They'll have at least 60 to 70 workers, up to 100 at times, doing the traffic management for the light rail. So I want to congratulate them. It's fantastic to have you on board, and I'm going to pass over to them to say a few words. Anthony.
No worries. Come through. So very quickly, we're very proud to have won the light rail project to do the traffic management and the labour hire. Coming from humble beginnings, finishing rugby, to give people the opportunity to work, giving full-time employment and consistent work for us has really been a dream. So to win the project, which is a multi-million-dollar project, has been a lot of hard work, a lot of sleepless nights, but for us, really this builds our foundations for our business. So we want to thank the Mayor Tom Tate, Minister Mark Bailey, for their support in our business, and also for allowing us to be a part of this Gold Coast Light Rail project. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Any questions of me or the guys?
Do you have an update for the light rail project at the moment, how it's tracking?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you have an update for, how the light rail project's tracking at the moment?
Yeah, look, it is tracking well. It's still early days, of course. Heavy construction work's only been underway for a couple of months, and a lot of the work at the moment is a lot of the underground stuff. So moving sewer pipes and utilities, that sort of thing. When they did the original the highway through here, they weren't thinking about a light rail in the future, so those utilities do have to be moved before they move on to the next stages. But so far we're very happy with the work from John Holland and the team. It's going to be a big project over the next 3 years or so, and I thank everyone for their patience. It's going to be a very big project with a lot of jobs, but of course there'll be some inconvenience, and I just ask people to for their patience and leave themselves a little bit more journey time here and there, because inevitably there'll be some reduced speed zones and those sorts of things that you would ordinarily see around a construction site.
How many jobs does the project create?
Light rail, 760 jobs here on the Gold Coast, which is a huge injection of funds into people's, not just their mortgages, but to their expenditure, every week, every month, and that's good news for people who run restaurants, who run stores. The level of injection of funds into the whole Gold Coast economy from light rail is huge, and it'll go on for the next 3.5 years.
Can you tell us a bit about this hydrology report that you're releasing today?
Yeah, now we're kind of dealing with the other issue.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks, guys. No worries. I did warn them about that. 12 months ago, almost to the day, in fact, we saw record levels of rain coming to this area as well as Brisbane, in fact from about Bundaberg through to the border, and we saw that rain continue and absolutely smashed Lismore and beyond, so it was an extreme weather event. What we've been doing, of course, is we haven't neglected the M1 like the Newman Christopher Foley government did, where not a single new dollar went onto the M1 in 3 years. We've been investing in upgrades. We've finished our M1 upgrade there, Mudgery to Varsity Lakes. We're now doing the final section down to Tugun. One package is now complete. The other 2 packages are ongoing. Now, there's an area there where it's a very constrained environment through Currumbin and the creek there. And what we've seen there is that some people have been concerned that some of the flooding, which was substantial, are saying that was some of the construction a contributor to that. So what we did is we commissioned an independent report that was separate from the department to look at this issue fresh. What we know is we got more than 1 metre of rain up in Springbrook, not far away, and the rainfall in this catchment was often around 70 centimetres, so a lot of water coming down through the catchment and the system. But we wanted to have a fresh look at it, so we commissioned an independent hydrology report from experts to tell us what the situation was. Today we will release a full copy of that so that people can see the report. The normal privacy measures will be obviously included in that report to protect people's privacy, but the report is very clear. A couple of things that it's found is firstly that the measures that we put in place in terms of potential flooding on the construction site were in line with industry best practice. So the contractors of the M1 upgrade did the right things in planning for a flooding event, but what we saw was an extremity in terms of the event much beyond what was expected. In fact, a 1 in 50 year flooding event, which was well beyond the design of the temporary works there around the waterway. So while we did best practice by the contractors and by the department, the extremity of the event certainly had an impact, and the independent hydrology report has found that the modelling has shown that potentially 25 properties may have had additional flooding above the floorboards where ordinarily they may not have had it below the floorboards, and so we will be contacting those people today to inform them of that finding and to talk to them and work with them in terms of whether helping them with any impacts that have been had. I take out my responsibility, the Minister for Transport and Main Roads, very seriously in terms of making sure we are looking after people who need to be assisted. And in this case, there's 25 properties that may be potentially impacted. Now, this is modelling, so it may be that there may be less properties in actuality that are impacted. That's why we will be contacting them and working with them. We also have a $740 million resilient home fund that are jointly funded by the state Palaszczuk government and the Commonwealth that is designed to help people who have been flooded and to not just recover but to build back better. So there are substantial commitments there that have been there for nearly a year that will help people as well. So I want to make it very clear, if there's any person who's been adversely impacted in this circumstance, the state government will assist them and we will help them, and that process is beginning today.
Could there be more than 25 houses if it could be less?
No, the independent hydrology report identifies there are potentially 25 properties where there might have been floodwater above the floorboard level when otherwise there might not have been, but they will then be talking to each of those individual house owners to see what the case was, because this is modelling that they've been using, which is very complex hydrology modelling, and it might be that it might be less than that or it might be 25. We will find that out as we speak to people. If people don't hear from us, then they are clearly not one of those 25 properties, and there is a separate process, of course, around the resilient home funds where we have been helping people not just in this area but right across southeast Queensland and north of there who have been impacted by flooding.
Will there be compensation?
Well, look, if there's responsibility established by our works, then obviously we need to help people, and that means resources, and we've already done that through the Resilient Home Fund. But specifically, if this is the case, my view is very clear as Minister. Yes, we should be helping them, and we will help them.
How much has been put aside to support those potentially 25 families or homes?
Yeah, well, look, we've got to establish firstly who has been impacted and who hasn't in actuality, because this is modelling that we're talking about. And once we do that, we'll get a sense of what measures there need to be put in place to assist people. And look, we will help them. There's no doubt about that. When you've got $740 million committed already, it shows very strong commitment to helping people. Look, I know the impacts of flooding. I had 120 streets in my own electorate where houses were flooded, a year ago. I spent 2 weeks on the streets talking to people. It's a terrible, horrific nightmare for people to go through. And I want to make sure that the state government helps anybody who might be amongst those 25. We will help them and we will reach out to them and we will work with them.
Is there any new procedures being put in place? Obviously there's still a long way to go for the roadworks. There might be another weather bomb for all we know. Is there any new procedures that are being put in place?
Look, TMR is looking obviously at that, but the report shows that best practice is to prepare for a 1 in 20 event, which they did. And I think the chances of there being another extreme weather event are fairly low, but of course you've always got to consider that too. So this area is often a natural floodplain. So, but there are some houses that are in this area, and we will seek to assist them as much as we can. And the Resilient Homes Fund offers funding for people to recover and often recover and build back better. So we're helping people to raise homes where that's possible. We're helping people who can't raise their home to refit it in a much more resilient way, so that if it happens again, then it's a much more easy and manageable way to do that. So I know there's cases in my electorate where people will build out the bottom level much more simply, bring the power box up above the flood level, build the house back in a much more resilient way. We're doing a range of different things through the Resilient Home Fund, and that's certainly something we'd be looking at if there are people in that 25 who have been impacted.
And is there a reason why it took 12 months? Is that the normal standard time for reports? It seems like a long time.
Yeah, look, hydrology is a very complex issue. I know this from being the Minister for Main-Roads for 8 years. Hydrology takes time. It is a complex process. I don't profess to be a hydrology expert, and very few people are actually. It's a very rare skill. So they need to work through all the issues. There's a lot of data inputs. There's a lot of work and modelling and things that need to be done to make it accurate. So they needed time to do that work. We've now received that report. We're simply redacting any privacy issues there, that, as you would in terms of protecting people. We're duty bound to do that. But I've been very happy to release that report today so everybody can see what's in it. I think that's important that government be transparent with people, and particularly in the circumstances where people have gone through a terrible experience with flooding. It is a horrific experience if you're that person.
Just on residential buildings in South Brisbane, does the state government support Brisbane City Council's proposition of allowing residential buildings in South Brisbane to be built up to 274 metres aviation safety height limit?
Look, I've just read that myself, this morning in the media. So, obviously government will consider that proposal, I'm sure, from the council. What we do know is that we need more housing for people. It's very difficult for people in terms of housing supply at the moment. While I'm not going to offer a particular view on behalf of the government, that is something the government will seriously consider.
Can I ask on the Coomera Connector, the federal government has received a reconsideration request on the basis that since the approval in 2020, the National Recovery Plan for koalas has been released, the South East Queensland Conservation and Protected Animal Translocation Policy has been released. Also, since its approval, the submitter suggests that it's been released that the koalas will be relocated as part of stage 1, will be relocated to an area too close in proximity to stage 2 to be viable. I'm just wondering your reaction on that. Is that due cause for the project to be reconsidered?
Look, these are matters for the federal government to consider in terms of any submissions that they've received. And we are ready to go on the Coomera Connector second M1. We are absolutely ready to go. There is a final federal approval process through the Environmental Biodiversity Protection Act to play out yet. So the federal government will need to do that appropriately and thoroughly, and I have confidence that they will do that. What I do know is that in our planning for this project, environmental protection has been at the forefront of our approach, particularly the issue of koalas and koala protection. We've been working with a range of different koala groups. We know in this area that there are some very fragmented and at-risk koala populations that are very likely not to be sustainable. That is why we have bought more than 800 hectares of koala habitat at 2 different locations, so that if we've, in terms of koala preservation, We want them to survive and thrive, and that is a substantial commitment. 800 hectares is a lot of land, and it will mean that as urban development has encroached on koala habitat here, some of these populations have got issues of inbreeding, they've got some issues of disease, and very small numbers. So we're working closely with koala groups because we want a positive outcome for koalas and other fauna, but particularly koalas in this area where their habitat's just getting eaten away by urban development all the time.
Sorry, just back to those safety height limits. Will it help address the housing crisis, and is there appropriate road infrastructure to support this level of density?
Oh, look, broadly, I think the state government is interested in working with other levels of government in terms of how to build more housing and how to build it quickly. So I think there's an overall principle that we're very committed to. Certainly being located close to the CBD and services and public transport. This location is very close to the South Brisbane Railway Station, South Brisbane Busway Station. It is very well located for public transport, which I think is a real positive for it. But again, it's something I've just seen this morning. The state government will consider it, no doubt, in detail, and the line minister is not me. It will be very likely the Deputy Premier, I expect. We will look at it very seriously.
And just from Toowoomba, the member for Toowoomba North is calling for you to visit the region to meet with truckies and hear how they're being affected by continued delays to repairing the bypass. He says it's time for you to stop blaming Nexus and take responsibility. What's the latest estimate on when it will completely reopen?
Yeah, look, this was a contract form that we inherited from the previous Newman LNP government. It was very much a contract, cheapest price and not much else. And but we didn't want to hold this project up. It would have put it back years. So Nexus got the contract. They are responsible for repairing this issue under the contract. So yes, it is Nexus's responsibility. For the LNP to be playing politics on a contract form that they actually decided themselves and have led to this situation is just rank hypocrisy. I'll be going up there to have a look at the issue over the next month or so. But it is Nexus's responsibility, and they should repair it. There's no doubt there's an issue there, but we're seeing heavy vehicles get through both ways, as there is a lane restriction there. They're appropriately managing it, and it is an unfortunate situation, that is for sure, and the people who are responsible for it, Nexus, are fixing it.
So one more for me on the Coomera connector.
Yep.
That alignment has been identified as a possible expansion area for faster rail, where the Coomera connector runs alongside it. In that stage one, especially around the Smith Street to the Coomera River area, is there enough space for both expanded faster rail and the Coomera connector?
The corridor is substantial, so we've obviously looked at planning for the future all the way through here, not just for rail and road, but also active transport. You'll see all the way along this 16 kilometre second M1 there'll be active transport as well. So we are planning for the future. We're seeing 3 new railway stations for the Gold Coast come in under Cross River Rail at Pimpama, at Hope Island, which is very close to the Coomera connector, and we're doing some coordination there to make sure that they're built in sympathy with each other, and also down at Wurrungeree as well. So I'm confident about our transport planning going forward in terms of all forms here. And people have to remember, when we came to office, we didn't have a corridor. The previous government actually blocked and were trying to delist this corridor and actually destroy this corridor when David Crisafulli and Campbell Newman were in power. And it's been this government that's worked very hard from very early on. I made it very clear to my Director General in 2015 we needed to get on and crack on and get this corridor secured. And we did that in less than 4 years for 45 kilometres of new highway, which has to be a record. And then I got the funding from both the federal and the state governments within 18 months after that. So, this project has only happened because of the commitment of the Palaszczuk Labor government and the foresight, because we know this is needed for a booming population. And, there's a bit more of the federal process to finish at the moment, but we are getting closer, and I look forward to this project starting, and I'll be very proud as an old Gold Coast boy to be there at the opening and the sod turn. because it is a piece of infrastructure that everyone on the northern Gold Coast I know supports, and they'll be very pleased to see construction start.
So I know we're running a bit over time, so I'll just one more question for me.
Always one more, but all right, okay, come on. Yep.
In the public environmental report for the Coomera Connector, there's very little, and I might be wrong because it's an extensive report, but from my reading over the past 6 months, there's very little detail, if no detail, on the prospect of faster rail along that line, which could be considered confusing given that it could potentially impact things like wildlife corridors, which would be a critical part of the Coomera Connector's approval. Why hasn't that been factored in, especially considering it was part of the 2032 Olympic bid as well?
Well, I think the key thing here is that there is a lot of money going into rail. As I mentioned, the three new stations. There'll be a double track duplication much further north from Beenleigh up to Currabee, which will mean the express trains going to Brisbane and also coming to the Gold Coast will get through a lot faster. So the money is going to where it needs to go. At some point we will get faster rail down that way, but it's not in the foreseeable future. What we needed to do for the Commonwealth Games was to get a double track all the way, which we did. We duplicated in record time from Helensvale to Coomera to get the capacity so we get 8 trains an hour into the Games. That went very, very well. And we'll have these additional stations too. So, what we've got to do is get a complete railway system before we start talking about faster rail. We're obviously doing the planning. The last section of heavy rail to the airport is going on right now. That's something we'll need to consider going forward. Really, when you've got a complete railway going all the way to the very south of the Gold Coast and connecting to the airport, you then can be in a position where you might be looking at faster rail. But at the moment, the best way to get faster rail for the people from the Gold Coast going to Brisbane is actually to double track duplicate between Currabee and Beenleigh. Well, thanks everyone.
If you get in trouble being late to the next one, you can blame the others.
Yeah, sure, no worries, all good.